The hospital smell had become familiar, almost comforting in its antiseptic sharpness. I sat beside my father's bed, listening to the rhythmic beep of monitors, watching the shallow rise and fall of his chest beneath starched white sheets. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow that made the world feel unreal, like I was trapped inside someone else's nightmare. But this was my nightmare, my reality. I held Dad's hand, his skin paper-thin and cold despite the heated blanket the nurses had draped over him. 3 days since the accident. That's what the police report called it. A mugging gone wrong. A random attack in an alley he had no business being in. But I saw the precise brutality in his injuries, the calculated nature of broken ribs and shattered kneecap. This was a message, not a mugging. Someone had hurt him deliberately, methodically, and left him alive to suffer. The worst part? I didn't even know why. My eyes burned from exhaustion. 72 hours of juggling my morning shift at the diner, afternoon bartending gig, and late-night cleaning job at the office complex downtown. I'd been awake so long that time had started to blur, moments bleeding into each other like watercolors left in the rain. But sleep meant leaving him alone, and I couldn't do that. Wouldn't do that. 3 jobs weren't enough? I whispered, watching his unconscious face. The debt collectors didn't care about tears or explanations. They didn't care that Mom's cancer had drained our savings before killing her 2 years ago. They didn't care that Dad had worked himself into the ground trying to keep her comfortable, trying to give her one more day, one more week, one more borrowed moment. Medical bills covered the small table beside his bed. I'd stopped opening them. The numbers had become meaningless. 47,000, 83,000, 126,000. What difference did it make when I had 847 in my bank account and a maxed-out credit card? My phone buzzed. Another collections call. I silenced it without looking, adding it to the 17 missed calls from today alone. Let them leave voicemails. Let them send threatening letters. I had nothing left to give them except my exhaustion and my rage. The door opened. I looked up, expecting another nurse with another apologetic smile and another bill I couldn't pay. Instead, expensive Italian leather shoes clicked against the linoleum floor. The sound was wrong for this place. Too rich, too deliberate, too sharp against the soft shuffle of hospital staff. A man entered, and every instinct I had screamed danger. He wore a suit that cost more than my yearly rent, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes that caught the harsh fluorescent light. But that wasn't what made my breath catch. It was the mask. Silver, ornate, covering the upper half of his face in an elaborate Venetian style. It left his mouth visible. Full lips, strong jaw, a small scar at the corner of his mouth. But his eyes remained hidden behind the metallic barrier. The mask should have looked ridiculous, costume party theatrical in a sterile hospital room. Instead, it looked terrifying. Powerful. Like he wore danger as casually as other men wore cologne. Miss Morgan. His voice was deep, slightly accented, wrapping around my name like smoke. We need to talk about your father's debt. My stomach dropped. Who are you? He didn't answer, just gestured to the hallway with one leather-gloved hand. Not here. This conversation requires privacy. Every fiber of my being wanted to refuse, to tell him to get out, to scream for security. But something in his posture, the absolute certainty that I would follow, made me stand. I kissed Dad's forehead, whispered a promise I wasn't sure I could keep, and followed the masked stranger into the corridor. He led me to a small consultation room, the kind where doctors delivered bad news to grieving families. The masked man closed the door behind us with a soft click that sounded like a cell locking. Another man waited inside, older, silver-haired, wearing a lawyer's expensive suit and a predator's cold eyes. Miss Morgan, I'm Richard Blackwood, attorney representing Crimson Capital Investments. He placed a manila envelope on the small table between us. The envelope looked innocent, legal-sized, and cream-colored. My hands shook as I reached for it. Your father, the lawyer continued, his voice clinically detached, secured a loan from my clients 18 months ago. 500,000 to be precise. The number hit me like a physical blow. That's impossible. My father wouldn't. Blackwood opened the envelope, spreading photographs across the table like a dealer showing a losing hand. Dad in a casino, chips piled in front of him. Dad signing papers in a dim office, his face desperate and determined. Dad accepting a briefcase of cash from a man whose face was turned from the camera. Mom's treatments, I whispered, the truth crystallizing with sickening clarity. He was trying to save her. Indeed. Admirable if foolish. Blackwood's tone suggested he found it neither. The loan terms were explicit. Repayment within 18 months or... He paused, letting the threat hang. Collection methods become necessary. My father's broken body flashed through my mind. The accident that wasn't an accident at all. I don't have 500,000. My voice sounded small, defeated. I don't have 5,000. I can't. We're aware of your financial situation, Miss Morgan. Blackwood slid another paper toward me. You have 72 hours to remit payment in full. After that, my clients will be forced to pursue alternative collection methods. The clinical language couldn't disguise the threat. They would hurt him again. Kill him, maybe, or hurt me. I looked at the masked man, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, watching me from behind that silver barrier. Why are you here? If you're just going to threaten me, the lawyer could have done this alone. The corner of his visible mouth curved slightly. Not quite a smile. I'm here, he said slowly, because I represent a different option. Blackwood gathered his papers with practiced efficiency. My business is concluded. What Mr. Moretti offers you now is entirely separate from my client's interests. He left without another word, and suddenly I was alone with the masked stranger. Moretti. The name sent ice through my veins. I'd heard that name whispered in the bar where I worked, in hushed conversations between men who looked over their shoulders when they spoke. The Moretti family, organized crime, violence wrapped in expensive suits and old-world tradition. You look like you might run, he observed, moving between me and the door. Not threatening, just present. Impossible to escape. I'm not stupid enough to run from a Moretti. The words came out braver than I felt. His lips curved into something that might have been approval. Smart girl. So let's talk about your options. He leaned against the door, crossing his arms. Even relaxed, he radiated controlled danger. Option 1, you try to run. My associates find you within 24 hours. Your father's debt transfers to you. Collection begins immediately and painfully. I wrapped my arms around myself, coffee stains on my uniform suddenly glaring against his tailored perfection. Option 2, he continued. You stay. Work yourself into an early grave trying to pay off a debt you can never cover. Your father dies here alone because you're too busy working to sit with him. And when you finally collapse, the debt still remains. You're painting a beautiful picture, I said bitterly. Is there an option 3? Yes. He pushed off the door, moving closer. Close enough that I could smell his cologne. Cedar and bergamot, expensive and intoxicating. You marry me. I laughed. Couldn't help it. The absurdity of it after everything else. Excuse me. 1 year. You play the role of my wife. Public appearances, social events, family obligations. Nothing more. His voice was steady, businesslike, as if proposing marriage were as ordinary as discussing the weather. In exchange, your father's debt disappears. Medical bills paid in full. Private care, best doctor's money can buy. Why? The question burst out of me. Why would you? Those are questions for after you sign. He pulled a folded document from his inner jacket pocket. Contract already prepared, as if he'd known exactly how this conversation would go. You have 10 seconds to decide, Miss Morgan. After that, I walk away and you're left with options 1 and 2. My mind raced. This was insane. Marry a complete stranger? A criminal? A man whose face I hadn't even seen? But Dad's broken body lay in that hospital bed. The machines keeping him alive cost money I didn't have. And this masked stranger was offering salvation wrapped in silk and danger. My father's medical care, I heard myself say. Full coverage. The best treatment available. Beneath the mask, I sensed rather than saw his satisfaction. Already arranged. Sign, and within the hour, he'll be transferred to a private facility with round-the-clock specialized care. He offered me a pen. Expensive, heavy, cold in my trembling fingers. I looked at the contract. Legal jargon swam before my exhausted eyes, but certain phrases leaped out. 1-year term, public appearances, annulment clause, financial compensation. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, dangerous, a trap I'd never escape. But what choice did I have? Let Dad die? Let them come for me next? I signed. My hand shook, but my signature was firm. Elara Morgan, selling herself to save the only family she had left. His gloved fingers brushed mine as he took the contract, and electricity sparked between us. Unexpected, unwanted, undeniable. Our eyes met, or would have if I could see his behind that mask. For a heartbeat, the clinical transaction felt like something else entirely. Welcome to the family, Mrs. Moretti, he said softly, and somehow the title sounded both like a promise and a threat. I just married a masked stranger to pay my father's debt. And I had the terrifying feeling that I'd signed away far more than just a year of my life. The car ride to his penthouse felt like being transported to another dimension. I sat in the back of the Mercedes, the leather seats buttersoft beneath me, watching the city lights blur past tinted windows. Dante. I supposed I should call him that now, though the name still felt foreign on my tongue, sat beside me in silence. The space between us hummed with unspoken tension, the air thick with the weight of what I'd just done. I'd married him, a masked stranger, a criminal whose face I'd never seen. The ring on my finger caught the passing streetlights, emerald and diamonds winking like tiny green eyes. It was heavy, far heavier than the cheap jewelry I was used to. Everything about this felt heavy. The car, the silence, the man beside me, the future I just signed away. I don't even know your name, I said finally, my voice barely audible over the engine's purr. Your real name. He turned his head slightly, the mask catching light and shadow. You'll know what you need to know, Mrs. Moretti. Mrs. Moretti. The title sent ice down my spine. I'd heard that name before, whispered in the bar where I worked late shifts. Conversations that stopped when I approached with drinks. Men who looked over their shoulders when they said it, voices low and careful. Moretti. As in organized crime. As in people who make other people disappear. My hands trembled in my lap, and I clasped them together to hide it. What had I done? The penthouse was everything I'd expected and nothing I was prepared for. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, a glittering sprawl of lights that made me feel like I was floating above reality. Black marble floors reflected the modern art hanging on stark white walls, pieces I recognized from textbooks in my abandoned art classes. A Rothko, if I wasn't mistaken. Real, not a print. Worth more than I'd make in 10 lifetimes. Your room, Dante said, gesturing to a hallway. His voice was still formal, distant, as if we were strangers meeting at a business conference rather than a man showing his new wife where she'd sleep. The bedroom suite was bigger than my entire apartment had been. King-sized bed with silk sheets in deep charcoal. A walk-in closet that, I discovered when I opened it, was already full of clothes. Designer labels I'd only ever seen in magazine advertisements. Dresses, blouses, jeans, shoes. All in my exact size. My stomach turned. He'd planned this, researched me, knew my measurements, my size, probably my favorite color and the name of my childhood pet. The bathroom was equally obscene in its luxury. Marble countertops, a soaking tub big enough for two, a shower with more jets than I could count. Luxury bath products lined the shelves, their labels in French and Italian. I caught my reflection in the mirror. Same girl. Same tired eyes and paint-stained hands and coffee-stained uniform. but the world around me had transformed into something unrecognizable. "We appear together at events," Dante said from the doorway, making me jump. I hadn't heard him follow. "You wear the ring. You smile. You play the role of loving wife." I turned to face him. "And what else? You don't ask about my business." His voice was firm, leaving no room for negotiation. "You don't enter my office. You don't remove your ring. Ever. So I'm a prisoner." His jaw tightened, the only part of his face I could see below the mask. "You're protected. Learn the difference." He left before I could argue, the door closing with a soft click that felt unnervingly final. I learned quickly that being Dante Moretti's wife meant living in a gilded cage. Every morning, I woke to find fresh coffee waiting in the Kit Morgan. Cream and 2 sugars, exactly how I took it. I never saw him make it, never heard him moving through the penthouse. He was like a ghost who left evidence of his presence in small, careful gestures. The days stretched long and hollow. I explored the penthouse, mapping its luxurious emptiness. Living room with furniture that looked too expensive to sit on. Dining room with a table that could seat 12. Guest bedrooms I'd never use. And his office, always locked, always forbidden. I stood outside that door more than once, hand hovering over the handle, curiosity burning. What secrets did he keep behind that lock? What darkness funded this pristine cage? But I never tried the door. Some instinct warned me that crossing that boundary would have consequences I wasn't ready to face. Art supplies appeared in my room on the 3rd day. Professional-grade oils, canvases, brushes I'd dreamed of owning. No note, no explanation. Just the supplies arranged neatly on the desk by the window. He'd noticed I'd stopped painting. Somehow, in the chaos of medical bills and exhaustion, he'd learned that about me. Had cared enough to do something about it. He was a stranger who knew me better than anyone. Nights were different. Nights we performed. Charity galas. Business dinners. Gallery openings. We appeared together, my hand on his arm, his hand possessive on my waist. To the world, we were newlyweds, glowing with fresh love. I smiled until my cheeks ached. Let him kiss my temple. His lips brushing my skin in a way that sent involuntary shivers down my spine. "You're doing well," he murmured during one event, his breath warm against my ear. "I'm lying," I replied, smile never faltering for our audience. "We're all lying, Kara. That's how this world works." The touches were staged, calculated for maximum effect. But my body didn't know that. Every time his hand slid to the small of my back, every time his thumb traced absent circles on my waist, my pulse jumped traitorously. Heat pooled low in my stomach, unwanted and undeniable. I hated that I responded to him. Hated that I lay awake at night remembering the weight of his hand, the scent of his cologne, the way his voice roughened when he said my name. It was the 7th night when everything shifted. Couldn't sleep. Again. My mind raced with questions I couldn't answer, fears I couldn't voice. At 2 a.m., I gave up and padded barefoot to the Kit Morgan for water. The city glowed through the windows, never truly dark. And there, silhouetted against those lights, stood Dante. Without his mask. His back was to me, broad shoulders tense beneath a black t-shirt. Dark hair, slightly mussed as if he'd been running his hands through it. For the first time since I'd met him, I was seeing him almost human, almost vulnerable. I froze in the doorway, afraid to breathe, afraid to break whatever spell had led to this moment. "Should I leave?" I whispered. "Stay." His voice was different without the mask. Rougher, more raw. As if the silver barrier had been filtering more than just his appearance. I moved slowly into the Kit Morgan, hyper-aware of every sound. My bare feet on cold marble, the whisper of my oversized t-shirt, the pounding of my heart. He didn't turn around. Just stood there, glass of whiskey in hand, staring out at the city he apparently ruled from shadows. "Can't sleep?" I asked, though the answer was obvious. "Never could." He took a drink. "Even less so now." I leaned against the island, keeping distance between us. Why me? The question burst out before I could stop it. The contract. Your grandfather's will. You could have chosen anyone. Models, socialites, women who'd kill for this ring. Why choose a broke waitress with paint under her fingernails? The silence stretched so long I thought he wouldn't answer. You were suitable, he said finally. Bullshit. Anger flared, burning through my exhaustion. You researched dozens of women. I saw the files on your lawyer's desk. What made me different? He turned slightly, not enough for me to see his face, but enough that I caught his profile in the window's reflection. Strong nose, sharp cheekbone, that scar at his jaw. Your father's debt wasn't random, he said quietly. He borrowed from my organization. I've known about you for months. My stomach dropped. You're saying you, what, planned this? I'm saying nothing is ever random in my world, Alara. The sound of my name in his unfiltered voice did something dangerous to my equilibrium. Made the Kit Morgan feel smaller, the air thicker. My grandfather's will is real, he continued. I needed a wife, but not just anyone. He paused, and I heard him take another drink. Someone with nothing to lose. Someone who couldn't betray me because I held all the cards. So I'm collateral. The words tasted bitter. Yes, his honesty shouldn't have hurt, but it did. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the heated penthouse. But you're not what I expected, he added, voice dropping even lower. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. What a better actress. A more convincing fake wife. Stronger. He set down his glass with careful control. More. He stopped himself, shoulders tensing as if he'd revealed too much. Something reckless stirred in me. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the intimacy of darkness and honesty. Maybe it was the way my body had been betraying me all week, responding to a man I couldn't even see. I moved closer. Dangerous. Drawn to him anyway. Take off the mask, I said. Let me see you. No. Why? I was directly behind him now, close enough to smell cedar and bergamot. Afraid I'll sketch you properly? His back muscles tensed beneath the thin fabric. Alara, don't. Don't what? Ask questions? Want to see my husband's face. My voice cracked slightly on the word husband. Or is it that you're afraid? He turned. Not fully. Not enough to see his face. But enough that moonlight caught the strong line of his jaw, the pulse beating in his throat, the way his hands clenched at his sides like he was physically restraining himself. I'm not afraid of you, he said, voice rough as gravel. I'm afraid of what I'll do if you keep looking at me like that. The air between us electrified. 6 feet of space that felt like 6 inches. His chest rose and fell with controlled breaths. My pulse hammered so loud I was certain he could hear it. I reached out without thinking. Stupid. Reckless. But my fingers moved anyway, wanting to touch, to confirm he was real beneath all the mystery and masks. He caught my wrist before I made contact. His grip was firm but not painful, his skin warm against mine. For a heartbeat, we stood frozen. His hand around my wrist, the city lights painting us in silver and shadow. 1 year, Alara, he said, and his voice carried warning and promise in equal measure. Then you're free. And if I don't want to be free? Wrong thing to say. Perfect thing to say. His grip tightened fractionally, then released like I'd burned him. Go to bed. It wasn't a request. I went, but felt his eyes follow me down the hallway. Felt the weight of his gaze like a physical touch. Back in my room, I pressed my back against the door, my wrist still tingling where he'd held it. My heart raced. My skin felt too tight. I'd married a masked stranger to save my father. But somewhere in the past 7 days, between coffee with cream and 2 sugars, between stage touches and late-night conversations, between the mask and the mystery, I'd started wanting him to unmask more than just his face. I woke to unfamiliar walls and the sharp taste of panic. For a disorienting moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Not the penthouse. Not my old apartment. Concrete walls, no windows, industrial lighting that hummed with a sound like trapped wasps. Then memory crashed back. Gunfire, blood, Dante covering my body with his own, his shoulder bleeding as he rushed me into an armored car. The safe house. We were in a safe house because someone had tried to kill us. My hands shook as I pushed off the narrow cot. Every muscle ached, adrenaline hangover leaving me hollowed out and jittery. I could still smell gunpowder, still hear the crack of bullets shattering glass. Voices drifted from the main room, rapid Italian, Dante's voice sharp with command. I followed the sound, padding barefoot across cold concrete. He stood with his back to me, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing with his free hand. His shoulder was professionally bandaged, white gauze stark against his olive skin. He changed into a black t-shirt, tactical pants, looking every inch the dangerous man he'd been hiding beneath expensive suits. When he sensed me in the doorway, he turned. The mask he wore today was different, simpler, almost utilitarian. Less ornate performance, more practical necessity. "You should be sleeping," he said, covering the phone's mouthpiece. "I can't. Not after." I gestured vaguely at everything. The safe house, the attack, the almost confession that had died on his lips when bullets started flying. Not after last night. Something shifted in his posture. The rigid control he always wore like armor showed hairline cracks. Vulnerability leaked through, subtle but unmistakable. "We need to talk," I said, crossing my arms. "Really talk. No more half-truths." He spoke quickly into the phone, orders I didn't understand, then ended the call. For a long moment he just looked at me, assessing, calculating, deciding how much truth I could handle. After I handle, no. Now. I planted my feet immovable. "You said I was your weakness. You don't get to take that back in daylight because it's convenient." His jaw clenched beneath the mask. "Alara, I've played the perfect wife. Smiled at your events. Worn your ring. Let you parade me in front of people who'd kill me if they knew I was just a hired actress." My voice rose, weeks of frustration boiling over. "But I'm done with half-truths. I'm done pretending this is just business when you bled for me last night. When you said I was your weakness like it was a confession." The silence stretched between us, taut as a wire. Then, for the first time since I'd met him, Dante backed down. "Marco," he called to the hallway. "Give us the room." Heavy footsteps. His underboss appeared. A man built like a bear with scarred knuckles and cold eyes. "Boss, protocol says, out. Now." Marco hesitated. In his world, leaving the boss alone and vulnerable probably violated every security rule ever written. But something in Dante's tone made him nod curtly and disappear. The door closed. We were alone. Truly alone for the first time since that hospital parking lot where I'd signed away my life. Dante moved to a battered table, poured 2 glasses of scotch from a bottle that looked distinctly out of place in this concrete bunker. Morning drinking, but neither of us cared. He slid 1 glass across to me, then sat, the coffee table between us like a symbolic barrier. "What do you want to know?" His voice was quieter now, stripped of its usual command. "Everything." I wrapped my hands around the glass, needing something to hold. "Start with your real name." "Dante Alessandro Moretti." He took a drink. That part was always true. "And the mask." He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of old ghosts. "My father was killed when I was 25, ambushed leaving a restaurant in broad daylight. They shot him 11 times. He flexed his hands, and I saw the scars on his knuckles for the first time, white lines across bronzed skin. He died in my arms, bled out on the sidewalk while people walked past, too afraid to help. Horror and sympathy warred in my chest. I'm sorry. I was supposed to go to law school. Had acceptance letters. Columbia, Yale, Harvard. A normal life waiting. His laugh was bitter. Instead, I inherited an empire built on blood and fear. 25 years old and suddenly responsible for hundreds of families, thousands of operations, enemies on every side who saw my youth as weakness. I could picture it. A young man drowning in violence, in expectations, in a legacy he never asked for. The men who killed him were never caught, he continued, and now his voice hardened to steel. Because they were insiders. Someone in the family betrayed him, and I didn't know who. Couldn't trust anyone. So I became the mask. He touched the silver covering his face. No face meant no vulnerability. No identity meant no betrayal. It worked. I found the traitors. What did you do to them? His eyes met mine through the mask's eye holes. I did what needed to be done. With these hands. He showed me those scarred knuckles again. No delegation. No mercy. I made examples that would echo for years. I should have been repulsed. Terrified. Instead, I saw the young man who'd been forged in violence, shaped by necessity into something harder than he'd ever intended to be. And me, my voice barely whispered. Where do I fit in this? He leaned forward, elbows on knees, and for a moment looked almost vulnerable. My grandfather's will is real, but I had 6 months, not weeks. I could have chosen anyone. Models, socialites, women who'd have killed for a chance to wear that ring. He paused, and the air between us thickened. Then I saw you. My breath caught. At the hospital. I was there on other business. Wore scrubs to blend in, just another overworked medical professional. His voice dropped. You walked right past me in the hallway. Didn't even see me. You were crying but trying not to, heading to your father's room. I slid down my spine. You followed me. I watched through the door. No shame in his admission, just stark honesty. You sang to him. An old Italian lullaby, Ninna Nana. Where did you learn it? My hands trembled around the glass. My mother, before she died. I knew then. He stood, began pacing like a caged predator. You were loyal, loving, strong enough to survive my world. But more than that. He stopped, turned to face me fully. I wanted you to look at me the way you looked at him, like I was worth saving, like I mattered beyond what I could take or destroy. Understanding crashed over me like cold water. You didn't choose me because I was convenient. You chose me because you wanted me. Yes, you manufactured the debt timing. Made sure I had no other options. Yes, I stood too, fury igniting. You stalked me, watched me, orchestrated my father's debt crisis so you could swoop in like some twisted savior. Yes, he didn't even try to deny it. And I'd do it again. That's insane. I was pacing now, hands in my hair. You're insane. I know. His calm made me angrier. I whirled to face him. I should hate you. I should run. Annul this farce, disappear. You'd be dead in a week. He closed the distance between us. Victor's already hunting you. Last night proved it. Without my protection, you're a target they'll use to get to me. So I'm trapped. The words tasted like ashes. A prisoner who's developed Stockholm Syndrome. Are you? He moved to the door, opened it. Cold air rushed in from the corridor beyond. Leave. I won't stop you. There's a car in the garage, keys in the ignition, cash in the glove box. Enough to disappear if you're careful. I stared at the open door. Freedom. Right there. Everything I'd thought I wanted. But my feet wouldn't move. Why aren't you leaving? His voice was rough, almost desperate. Because. I turned to face him, and the truth I'd been denying for weeks spilled out. Because I'm as insane as you are. His chest rose and fell with carefully controlled breaths. I should hate you, I continued, words tumbling faster. I want to hate you, but every fake touch feels real. Every staged kiss makes me want more. I dream about you, not the mask, not the performance. You, the man who leaves me coffee, who bought me art supplies, who took a bullet for me. I stepped closer. I'm furious at you. And I've never wanted anyone more. Alara. My name was a warning and a plea. Show me. I closed more distance. No more masks. No more games. If I do, there's no going back. Good. I was close enough to touch now. Close enough to see his pulse jumping in his throat. I don't want to go back. His hands moved to the mask's ties. 30 years of hiding in one gesture. 7 years behind this specific barrier between him and the world. The mask fell away. The face that emerged from behind the mask stole my breath. Strong features carved from Mediterranean stone. Sharp cheekbones. A proud nose that had been broken at least once. A mouth made for either cruelty or tenderness depending on his mood. But it was his eyes that undid me. Dark as espresso, deep as oceans, burning with an intensity that had been filtered by the mask but now hit me full force. And the scars. God, the scars. One cut through his left eyebrow, pale against olive skin. Another traced his jawline, disappearing beneath his collar. These weren't decorative, they were survival violence written on flesh. Beautiful? I whispered before I could stop myself. Something flickered in those dark eyes. Surprise, maybe, or disbelief. You're looking at a monster, Elara. No. I stepped closer, hand rising of its own accord. I'm looking at a man. He flinched when my fingers first touched his face. An instinctive retreat from vulnerability. But he forced himself still, jaw clenched with the effort of not pulling away. I traced the eyebrow scar with my fingertips, featherlight. How? The night father died. His voice was gravel and whiskey. One of them got close before I could react. My fingers moved to his jaw, following the line of the second scar. And this, proving myself to men who thought I was too young to lead. I let one cut me so I could get close enough to break his neck. No apology in his tone, just brutal honesty. I continued my exploration, finding another scar at his collarbone, disappearing beneath his shirt. More stories written on skin. More survival. These aren't flaws, I murmured. They're proof you're still here. Still fighting. He caught my wrist, not roughly, but with a desperate kind of restraint. We stood inches apart, his hand engulfing mine, his chest rising and falling with carefully controlled breaths. Say something, he rasped. Tell me I'm a monster. Tell me you hate me. Give me a reason to let you go. I can't. Why not? Because I see you. I freed my hand, cupped his bare face with both palms. Finally see you. And you're not what I expected. What did you expect? A villain. But you're just a man. Damaged. Dangerous. But still just a man who bleeds and fears and wants. Something in him broke. I saw it happen, the final wall crumbling, 7 years of control shattering like glass. He pulled me against him, one hand tangling in my hair, the other splayed possessively across my lower back. Elara. My name was a prayer and a curse. I closed the last distance between us and kissed him. His control snapped completely. The kiss turned desperate, devouring, years of restraint unleashing in a single moment. His mouth moved against mine with a hunger that should have frightened me but instead ignited something equally fierce. My hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, needing more, needing everything. We kissed like we were drowning and this was air. Like we were dying and this was life. His tongue swept into my mouth, tasting, claiming, and I met him with equal ferocity. The coffee table dug into the back of my legs, but I didn't care. Nothing mattered except this. His mouth on mine, his hands in my hair, the way he groaned low in his throat when I bit his lower lip. When we finally broke apart, both gasping for air, his forehead dropped to mine. This changes everything, he murmured, voice wrecked. I know. You're still in danger. More danger now. They'll use you against me. I know that too. I can't promise you safety. Or normal. Or easy. I laughed shakily, hands still fisted in his shirt. When have I ever had those things? His eyes, those impossibly dark eyes I could finally see, searched mine. Looking for doubt. For fear. For regret. I'm choosing this, I said firmly. Choosing you. With my eyes wide open. He kissed me again, softer this time but no less intense. A seal on a promise we were both making without words. Then his phone shattered the moment. He ignored it, kissed me deeper. It rang again, insistent. Emergency. Dante, I whispered against his lips. Answer it. The look he gave me promised we weren't finished. Then he grabbed his phone, and I watched his face transform from man to mafia boss in the span of a heartbeat. What? Not a question. Command. I couldn't hear the other side, but I saw his expression shift. Surprise, then fury, then ice-cold calculation. When? A pause. How many? Another pause. I'm on my way. He ended the call, hands already moving, checking weapons I hadn't seen him carrying. When he looked at me, his eyes had gone from burning to frozen. What's wrong? I asked, though I already knew. In his world, nothing good came from emergency calls. Victor made a move. His voice was controlled, but I heard the rage beneath. He took Isabella. The name hit me like a fist. His sister. The only person he'd mentioned from before, the only family he had left. When? 2 hours ago. From her apartment. He was already moving, pulling on tactical gear with practiced efficiency. He wants a trade. My stomach dropped. A trade. He turned to face me fully, and for the first time since removing his mask, I saw real fear in his eyes. You for her. Time stopped. The air turned thick, impossible to breathe. Then give me to him, I said quietly. No. The word was absolute. She's your sister. And your... He stopped, jaw clenched so hard I heard teeth grinding. Fists at his sides, every muscle locked in restraint. I'm what? I stepped closer. Your contract wife? Your business arrangement. His eyes blazed. You're mine. Mine, Elara. Sister or not, I won't trade you. That's not your choice. The hell it isn't. He closed the distance, hands framing my face with a gentleness that contrasted his fury. I'd burn this entire city before I handed you over. Isabella knows that. She'd expect nothing less. So you'll let your sister die? For someone you met 6 weeks ago. I'd let the world burn for you. His voice dropped to something raw and broken. Don't you understand? I can't lose you. I won't survive it. Tears burned my eyes. You can't even say what I am to you, but you'd sacrifice family? The silence hung heavy between us. His hand still cupped my face, thumbs brushing away tears I didn't realize had fallen. Before I could push further, Marco burst through the door, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. Boss, we have an alternative. He was breathing hard, clearly having run. We can hit Victor's location. Full assault. Get Isabella out by force. Dante's hands dropped from my face. Success rate. 60%. Maybe 70 if we move now, before he expects it. Casualties? Marco's expression said everything. Guaranteed. But we'll get her back. Dante stood frozen for a heartbeat, warrior and brother warring in his expression. Then he nodded once. Gear up. We move in 20. I'm coming, I said. Absolutely not. She's about to be my sister-in-law. The words were out before I thought them through, but I didn't take them back. I'm coming. Something shifted in his eyes at sister-in-law, an acknowledgement of future, of permanence, of this being more than a contract that would expire. Then you stay behind me, he said finally. Always. You don't leave my sight. Understand. I nodded. He pulled me close, kissed me hard and fast. If anything happens to me, nothing will. If it does, he continued, Marco has instructions. Money, protection, a new identity. You'll be safe. Dante, promise me. Promise you'll run if I fall. I couldn't promise that. Wouldn't. But I nodded anyway, because he needed to hear it. Come back to me, I whispered instead. His lips found mine one more time. Always. The warehouse smelled like rust and rotting fish, perched on the docks where shipping containers rose like tombstones in the darkness. Dante's team moved like shadows, professional, silent, lethal. I stayed close to him, bulletproof vest heavy on my shoulders, a gun that felt foreign and terrifying in my hand. "Safety's off," he murmured, checking my vest one more time. "Point and squeeze. Don't think, just shoot." "I learn fast," I said, echoing his words from weeks ago. Despite everything, the corner of his mouth twitched. "That you do, Mrs. Moretti." Then his expression hardened. Hand signals to his men. Final checks of weapons. The moment stretched like pulled taffy, tense and fragile. "Breach!" he commanded softly into his radio. Explosives detonated. The warehouse door blew inward, and hell erupted. Gunfire shattered the night. Dante moved like death personified, precise, lethal, beautiful in the way violence could be when executed with perfect control. I pressed against a concrete pillar, heart hammering, trying to remember everything he'd taught me in our brief crash course. Point, breathe, squeeze. A hostile came around the corner. I fired, missed, adjusted, fired again, hit his shoulder. He went down screaming. "Good girl." Dante's voice, still calm despite the chaos. We pushed deeper into the warehouse. Bodies dropped. Theirs not ours, thank God. And then I saw her. Isabella. Tied to a chair in the center of the space. Dark hair matted with blood. Terror in her eyes. She looked so young. So breakable. Our eyes met across the chaos. She mouthed something, "Run." Then Victor stepped out of the shadows. Gun to Isabella's head. Smile like a wolf who'd cornered prey. "Moretti." His voice carried over the gunfire. "Show yourself or the sister dies." Everything slowed. I saw Dante step out from cover, hands raised. Saw the calculation in his eyes, the warrior assessing odds. Saw Isabella's tears, her silent apology. Saw Victor's gun swing from her head to point directly at me. "Tell me," Victor said, smile widening, "which one do you love more?" Time crystallized. I saw Dante's hand move toward his gun. Saw Victor's finger tighten on the trigger. Saw Isabella's eyes widen in horror. And I ran. Instinct overrode thought. I ran toward Isabella, toward the gun, toward certain death, because in that frozen moment I understood one truth. I'd rather die than watch him choose between us. Rather take the bullet than force him to live with that choice. I heard Dante roar my name, "Elara, no," but I was already moving. The gunshot was deafening. Pain exploded in my shoulder, white-hot and all-consuming. The impact spun me sideways, and I hit the concrete hard, vision blurring, the taste of copper flooding my mouth. Through the haze of agony, I saw Dante move. Saw him become the monster everyone feared, precise, lethal, unstoppable. He shot the gun from Victor's hand, dropped 3 men before they could react, crossed the warehouse in seconds. Isabella was freed, running, safe. But Dante dropped to his knees beside me, and the terror in his face was worse than the pain in my shoulder. "Stay with me." His hands pressed against the wound, trying to stop blood I could feel pumping hot between his fingers. "Elara, stay with me. Don't you dare close your eyes." "Saved her?" I managed, weak smile on my lips. "You stupid, brave, insane woman." His voice cracked. "I'm going to kill you myself if you die on me." Everything was getting dim, soft around the edges. "Love you," I whispered. "I love you. Do you hear me? I love you. So you're going to live. That's an order." His face above me was the last thing I saw before darkness claimed me. I'd seen death before, caused it, ordered it, stood over bodies and felt nothing but cold satisfaction that another enemy had been eliminated. But watching Alara's blood pool on dirty concrete, spreading dark and unstoppable beneath her broken body, I'd have traded every breath I had left for hers. "Medic!" My voice didn't sound like mine. Too raw. Too desperate. "Now!" My hands pressed against her shoulder, trying to stem bleeding that wouldn't stop. Her face had gone pale as paper, lips losing color, eyes fluttering closed. No, no, stay with me. Alara, stay with me. Around us, my men cleared the warehouse with brutal efficiency. Victor somewhere in the chaos, alive or dead, I didn't care. Isabella freed, safe, crying. But none of it mattered. Nothing mattered except the woman dying in my arms. The medic appeared, pushed me aside with professional urgency. Started working. Pressure bandages. For line. Medical jargon I barely processed. We need to move her. Now. The armored SUV ride to the hospital was the longest 20 minutes of my life. I held her in my lap, one hand maintaining pressure on the wound, the other cradling her face. Don't leave me, I whispered against her hair. You don't get to leave me. Not like this. Her eyes flickered open, unfocused. Dante, I'm here. Right here. Stay awake, Kara. Talk to me. The painting. Her voice barely audible. In my room. It's you. I know. I know. We'll talk about it. After you're better. After. Love. She couldn't finish. Her eyes drifted closed again. My heart stopped. I love you. Do you hear me? I love you. So you're going to live. That's not a request, that's an order. First time I'd said those words to anyone since my mother died. First time I'd meant them like this, desperate, terrified, true. Her hand went limp in mine. Alara! The private hospital wing smelled like antiseptic and fear. I sat in the surgical waiting room, blood still drying on my hands. Her blood. I wouldn't wash it off. Not until I knew. Isabella sat beside me, her own injuries bandaged, tears streaming silently down her face. She saved me, my sister whispered. I know. You love her. Really love her. I looked at Isabella, the only family I had left until 6 weeks ago, when a desperate woman with paint-stained fingers had signed her name and changed everything. Yes. Not like the contract? Not like the arrangement you told me about. A hollow laugh escaped. There was never an arrangement. Not for me. The contract was an excuse. A way to take what I wanted and call it business. I dropped my head into my bloody hands. I wanted her from the moment I saw her sing to her dying father. Everything else was just lies I told myself. The surgeon emerged hours later. I was on my feet before he finished pushing through the doors. She's stable. The bullet missed major arteries. She'll need time to heal, but she'll recover. My knees nearly gave out. Can I see her? She's sedated. But yes. I found her in a private room, monitors beeping steadily, bandages stark white against her too pale skin. I pulled a chair to her bedside and took her hand carefully, as if she might shatter. For the first time in 15 years, I cried. I'm sorry, I whispered to her sleeping form. I'm so sorry. I brought you into this. My war. My enemies. My darkness. I kissed her knuckles, tasting salt. You could have had a normal life. A good man who worked 9 to 5 and came home every night. Someone who'd give you safety and peace and everything you deserved. Instead you got me. A monster who couldn't let you go even when letting go was the right thing to do. She didn't answer. Just breathed, steady and alive, and it was enough. 36 hours later, she still hadn't woken. I still hadn't left. Marco brought updates I barely processed. Victor captured, currently being questioned, in ways that would leave him wishing he'd died in that warehouse. The Russian mob calling for negotiations. Territory disputes that needed my attention. Handle it, I told Marco flatly. Boss, you need to. I said handle it. I'm not leaving her. Isabella brought food I didn't eat, coffee that went cold. She sat with me sometimes, silent support, then left when the quiet got too heavy. Dante, she said softly on the second day, you need sleep. When she wakes, she'd want you to take care of yourself. When she wakes. Isabella didn't argue again. Alara surfacing through the pain fog felt like swimming through molasses. Everything hurt. Everything was heavy. The beeping of monitors slowly separated from the general noise, becoming distinct, then annoying. I tried to move. Fire exploded through my shoulder. A sound escaped me, half-groan, half-whimper. Alara! His voice, ragged and desperate, instantly at my side. I forced my eyes open. The light was too bright. Everything blurred. Then his face came into focus above me. Unmasked, haggard, beautiful. Dark circles under his eyes. Stubble covering his jaw. Hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it for days. He hadn't left. I could see it in every exhausted line of his face. Isabella? My throat felt like sandpaper. Safe. Because of you. He lifted my hand to his lips, kissed my knuckles gently. How do you feel? Like I've been shot. The attempt at humor came out weak, but he huffed something that might have been relief. Your humor's intact. Good sign. We looked at each other for a long moment. Then reality crashed back, the warehouse, the gunfire, running toward certain death. You ran into gunfire. His voice carried something between accusation and awe. She's your sister. You could have died. But I didn't. His jaw clenched, and I saw it happening. The walls going back up, the guilt settling over his shoulders like a familiar coat. What are you thinking? I asked, though I already knew. Could read it in his eyes. That I was wrong. Bringing you into this. He stood, paced to the window. This is my world, Alara. Violence. Blood. People getting hurt because of me. My heart clenched. Dante. When you're healed, I'll arrange everything. Protection. New identity. Somewhere Victor's people, where no one can find you. You'll be safe. What are you saying? He turned to face me, and his expression was carved from stone. I'm setting you free. The contract's void. You've paid more than enough. Fury ignited despite the pain medication fog. I tried to sit up, gasped as agony shot through my shoulder, fell back against pillows. I don't want free, I said through gritted teeth. You don't know what you want. You're in shock. Pain medication's affecting your judgment. I want you, you idiot. Dante, she glared at me from that hospital bed. Furious, in pain, beautiful. And I wanted nothing more than to kiss her. Claim her. Promise her forever. But that was the problem. My forever meant her dying young. Meant bullet wounds and safe houses and always looking over her shoulder. I took that bullet by choice, she continued, voice gaining strength. My choice. A choice you wouldn't have had to make if not for me. So what? She struggled against the 4 lines. You save me from a debt, give me a life, make me fall in love with you, then throw me away the moment it gets hard? My chest constricted. Fall in love? Yes. She shouted it, then winced at the pain the movement caused. I love you. Your scars, your violence, your impossible protectiveness. All of it. You don't tell me what I feel. Tears streamed down her face now. You think love means keeping me safe in a bubble? Doesn't. Love means letting me choose. Even if that choice is dangerous. Even if it terrifies you. I started pacing, hands in my hair. Victor was just one enemy. There are dozens. Hundreds. One war ends, another begins. That's my life. Then we fight them together. And when you die? I spun to face her. When I hold your body and know I caused it. That I brought you into this world and it killed you. Then you know you were loved. Her voice broke. Until the last breath. You know someone chose you. Not your power or your empire. You. The words hit like bullets. I was nobody before you, she whispered. An orphan working 3 jobs, invisible to everyone. You saw me. You made me matter. She wiped angrily at tears. Yes, you manipulated me. Yes, you forced this marriage. But you also gave me a reason to want tomorrow. To want something more than just survival. That's not love, I said, desperate now. That's trauma bonding. Stockholm Syndrome. You're confused. Her good hand moved faster than I expected. The slap wasn't hard. She was too weak for that. But the intent behind it cut deeper than any blade. "Don't you dare diminish this," she hissed. "I know the difference between captivity and choice. And I choose you. Even if you push me away. Even if you run. I choose you." I sat on the edge of her bed, careful of her injuries. Everything in me wanted to believe her, to take what she offered and never let go. But memories haunted me. Father's blood on the sidewalk. Mother's funeral. A closed casket because they'd poisoned her so thoroughly there was nothing left to see. Standing alone at 25, swearing I'd never love, never give enemies that kind of leverage. "I love you." The confession tore out of me, raw and bleeding. "I love you so much it terrifies me." When that gun fired, when you fell, my voice cracked. I understood every man who'd walked away from this life for a woman. I'd do it too. Burn my empire. Become nobody. If it meant keeping you safe. Then why won't you let me stay? Because I'm not strong enough to watch you die. The truth, finally. And I'm not strong enough to live without you. So we're at an impasse, Kara. Both loving each other. Both terrified. She reached for my hand, threaded our fingers together. "Then be terrified with me. But don't push me away." Before I could answer, the door burst open. Marco stumbled in, blood streaming from a fresh cut above his eye. "Boss," he gasped. "They're here." I was on my feet instantly. "Who?" "Everyone. Kozlov's remaining men, Caruso remnants, even the Bratva." He was breathing hard. "They've united. Against you. They're storming the hospital." The blood in my veins turned to ice. "How many?" 200. Maybe more. They're coming up the stairwells now. I looked at Alara, pale, injured, trapped. Looked at Marco, loyal, bleeding, waiting for orders. Looked at the gun on my hip and the woman in the bed and calculated odds I didn't like. "Get her out," I told Marco. "No." Alara's voice was steel despite her weakness. "This isn't negotiable." Gunfire erupted somewhere below us. Screaming. The distinctive crack of assault rifles. "They're on this floor," Marco reported, checking his phone. "We're out of time." I moved fast, barricading the door with everything I could find. Hospital furniture, supply carts, anything heavy. Checked my weapons, 2 guns, 1 knife. Not enough for 200 hostiles, but it would have to be. "What are you doing?" Alara was trying to get out of bed despite the pain. "Staying alive." I looked at her. "And keeping you that way. I can shoot. You can barely stand. Then prop me up." Her eyes blazed with the same fire that had made me fall for her. "We do this together or not at all." Despite everything, the blood, the enemies, the certain death approaching, I almost smiled. Insane woman. I gave her the smaller gun, checked the safety was off. Point and squeeze. Don't think. The door splintered. Men poured through. And we fought. Alara, 6 months later, I woke wrapped in Dante's arms. Morning sunlight streaming through the windows of our bedroom. His heartbeat steady beneath my ear. His hands splayed possessively across my lower back even in sleep. I traced the scars on his chest, the old ones and the new one from that hospital siege. Each mark a story. Each story part of the man I loved. He stirred, pulling me closer. "Morning, Mrs. Moretti." "Morning, Mr. Moretti." I kissed his chest, right over his heart. Comfortable silence. The kind that came from truly knowing someone. From choosing them every single day. "Marco's outside," he murmured, pressing his lips to my hair. "Said you have training today." I sat up, excited despite the early hour. "Really? Shooting range at 9. Hand-to-hand combat at 11. Then you're sitting in on the territory negotiations this afternoon." He pulled me back down, rolling so he loomed over me, careful of my still healing shoulder. "But first, breakfast can wait." I laughed, surrendering to his kiss, to his touch, to this life I'd chosen with eyes wide open and heart fully willing. 3 weeks later, the nausea started without warning. At first, I thought it was something I ate. Then stress. Marco had been pushing my combat training harder, and the territorial negotiations had grown tense. But when I found myself retching into the toilet for the 3rd morning in a row, hands shaking as I gripped the porcelain, a different truth crystallized. I stared at myself in the bathroom mirror. Same face. Same scars. The one on my shoulder from Victor's bullet had faded to pale pink. But something was different. Something had shifted. The pregnancy test I'd hidden in my drawer seemed to burn through the wood. I took it with trembling hands, Isabella's words from last week echoing, "You look different." Glowing. "Are you?" I'd laughed it off then. Now, watching the 2 pink lines appear, stark and undeniable, laughter felt impossible. A baby. Our baby. My hand moved instinctively to my stomach, still flat, still unchanged. But beneath my palm, a life was growing. A piece of Dante and me, tangled together in the most permanent way possible. Terror hit first. This world, his world, our world, was violence and danger. Enemies who'd use a child as leverage. A baby who'd grow up with bodyguards and bulletproof cars and the constant weight of the Moretti name. Then wonder. A tiny human with Dante's dark eyes and maybe my stubborn chin. Teaching them to paint. Watching Dante's face soften the way it did with Isabella. But more. Watching him become a father. Then fear again, sharper. What if something happened to me? To the baby? What if his enemies? Alara. Dante's voice through the door. Concerned. "You okay?" I shoved the test into my pocket. Splashed water on my face. "Fine. Just give me a minute." In the mirror, my reflection looked back. Terrified and exhilarated and completely unprepared. How did you tell a mafia boss he was going to be a father? Dante, I knew something was wrong the moment she emerged from the bathroom. Alara's face was pale, her hands trembling slightly as she tucked them into her pockets. In 6 months of marriage, I'd learned to read her tells. The way she bit her lower lip when nervous. The way her eyes darted when she was hiding something. "What's wrong?" I crossed to her, hands framing her face. "Are you hurt? Sick? Do I need to call the doctor?" "No. Yes. She took a shaky breath. "We need to talk." I slid through my veins. Those words. In my experience, nothing good ever followed those words. "Okay." I led her to the bed, sat beside her. Prepared myself for whatever blow was coming. She was leaving. She'd finally realized the cost of this life. "I'm pregnant." Time stopped. The words hung in the air between us, impossible and perfect and terrifying. I couldn't finish. My hand moved of its own accord to her stomach, palm flat against her shirt. "There's a baby? About 6 weeks, I think." Her voice was small, uncertain. "I know we never talked about this. I know your world is dangerous and bringing a child into it is." I kissed her. Hard and desperate and full of every emotion I couldn't name. When I pulled back, her eyes were wet. "You're not angry?" "Angry?" A laugh escaped, slightly manic. "Alara, I'm terrified. I'm more afraid than I've ever been in my life." I pressed my forehead to hers. "And I've never wanted anything more." "Really? We're having a baby." The words felt foreign, miraculous. "Our baby." I pulled her into my lap, careful, reverent. My hand returned to her stomach, protective already. "I'll keep you both safe, whatever it takes. No one will touch you. No one will." "Dante." She caught my face, made me look at her. "We'll keep each other safe. All 3 of us. All 3 of us. Family." For the first time since I'd inherited blood and violence at 25, I felt something beyond fear and control. I felt hope. For months later, Alara, the pregnancy showed now. A gentle curve beneath my clothes that made something primal and protective roar inside Dante every time he looked at me. I'd insisted on continuing training, though Marco had adjusted everything for my condition. I still sat in meetings, still learned the business, still refused to be kept in a cage. And Dante loved me more every day for it. It's a girl, I told him last week after the ultrasound, eyes shining. A daughter. A daughter. Elena, we'd decided. After his mother. I was in the nursery we'd been preparing. Soft gray walls, white furniture, still unfinished. When Marco burst through the door, face grim. Mrs. Moretti. We have a situation. My blood ran cold. What kind? Lorenzo. The name was a curse. Dante's cousin. The one who'd lost everything when Dante married me. He'd disappeared after our wedding, gone to ground. We'd had men searching for months. Where is he? At the gates. With about 50 men. Marco's hand was already on his radio. He's demanding the boss come out. And he specifically mentioned you. My hand went protectively to my stomach. For months. Vulnerable. And Lorenzo knew it. Dante appeared in the doorway, his face carved from stone. Get her to the safe room. I'm not hiding. Elara. That's my family he's threatening. My home. Our daughter. I met his eyes. We fight together or not at all. For a moment I thought he'd argue. Then he pulled me close, kissed my forehead. Stay behind me. Always. Gunfire erupted outside. Dante, the attack came fast and brutal. Lorenzo had planned this, coordinated it. Grenades at the outer gates, automatic weapons, military precision. He wanted us scattered, vulnerable. He wanted Elara. My men formed defensive positions, but Lorenzo's forces pushed through with suicidal determination. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here to end this. I found Lorenzo in the main entrance, smoke curling around him like a demon from hell. Same sharp features I remembered, but twisted now with years of resentment. Cousin. His smile was poisonous. Congratulations on the baby. A daughter, I hear. How fragile. Every muscle in my body locked with rage. Elara stood beside me. No longer behind me, beside me. Gun raised, eyes fierce despite her fear. This is your last chance, I said, voice ice. Walk away. Die quick later. Or stay and die slow now. Always so arrogant. Lorenzo's men fanned out. You stole my birthright. My empire. My future. His eyes slid to Elara, to her stomach. So I'll take yours. He raised his gun. Everything happened at once. I moved to shield Elara. My men opened fire. Lorenzo's forces returned it. The entrance hall became a war zone. But Elara shot first. Her bullet took Lorenzo in the shoulder, spinning him. My bullet followed center mass. He dropped, blood spreading beneath him. The fighting stopped. Lorenzo's men saw their leader fall and surrendered. It was over. I turned to Elara, checking her frantically. The baby. She's fine. We're fine. She pressed my hand to her stomach. We're all fine. I pulled her close, breathing her in. We'd survived. Again. Together. 6 months later, Dante, the cry was tiny but fierce, cutting through the quiet of the private hospital room. I watched, transfixed, as the doctor placed my daughter, our daughter, on Elara's chest. Elena Moretti. Dark hair, dark eyes already blinking open, impossibly small and perfect. She's beautiful, Elara whispered, tears streaming. Dante, look at her. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. This tiny human, this piece of us, real and alive and ours. My hand touched Elena's head, so small my palm covered it completely. Her tiny fist wrapped around my finger, grip surprisingly strong. Hello, Piccolina, I murmured. I'm your papa. And I promise you, my voice cracked. I promise you'll never doubt you're loved. You'll never feel alone. I'll give you the world. Elara smiled up at me through her tears. We'll give her the world. Together. Together, I agreed, kissing them both. 3 months later, The baptism Alara, the same chapel where Dante and I had married, now held our family. Isabella cooing over Elena in her white christening gown. Marco standing as godfather with surprising gentleness. Dante's men watching with soft smiles they'd never show in business. Father Antonio blessed Elena, making the sign of the cross on her forehead. She didn't cry, just looked around with curious dark eyes. Dante's eyes. "She's going to be trouble," Isabella whispered. "Just like her mother. And stubborn like her father," I added, taking Elena back into my arms. Dante stood beside us, his hand on the small of my back, and I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Peace. The wars would continue. Enemies would always circle. But looking at Elena's face, innocent, trusting, loved, we both understood what we were fighting for now. Not territory. Not power. Not revenge. Them. Family. I leaned into Dante, Elena between us. "We made it," I whispered. "Against everything, we made it." He kissed my temple, then Elena's head. "We made more than that, Cara. We made heaven out of the ashes." And for the first time in his violent life, he believed it. 1 year later, Alara, the past year, had been everything Dante warned me about and everything I never knew I needed. Negotiations at gunpoint with Elena sleeping in the next room. Enemies testing our defenses while I learned to shoot with one hand and hold a baby with the other. Sleepless nights, but now from feedings instead of fear. But it had also been art supplies in a studio where Elena's crib sat by the window. Quiet mornings watching Dante hold our daughter with hands that had killed, now cradling her with impossible gentleness. Isabella's laughter at family dinners. Marco teaching Elena to say Papa before Mama. Dante was insufferably smug about that. I stood in that same nursery now, watching Elena sleep. 1 year old tomorrow. Dark curls, Dante's eyes, my stubborn chin. Perfect and loved and ours. Dante's arms wrapped around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. "What are you thinking? That I walked into your world blind and terrified," I said softly. A desperate woman signing away a year of her life to save her father. And now, I turned in his arms, looked up at the man who'd stolen my life and given me a new one. Now, eyes open, heart full, scars earned and healing. I'd walk through hell beside you. Not because I have to. Not because of contracts or debts or manipulation. Why then? Because I choose to. Every single day, I choose this man, this life, this violent, beautiful world we're building together. He kissed me, soft and deep and full of forever. Ti amo, moglie mia. Ti amo, marito mio. Elena stirred in her crib, making small, sleepy sounds. We both moved to her instantly, Dante lifting her gently, her tiny hand gripping his finger. "Our little miracle," I whispered. "Our heaven," he corrected, eyes on our daughter. "Made from the ashes." And standing there, Dante holding our daughter, his other arm around me, our family complete and whole and fiercely protected. I understood what he meant. We hadn't just survived the fire. We'd been reborn in it. Together. Always together.